Cool. Well, on that note, I think it's a good time to get into everyone's favorite segment of all my interviews. If you're cool with transitioning into
Yeah, I
this,
am.
something that I ask all my guests is to make a list of five of your favorite Christian albums. They don't necessarily have to be like a top five. They can be, but they don't have to be. And I'm also very loose on the term of like what counts as a Christian album, because like it can be something that's like in the mainstream Christian music, or it can be something like in the indie music world. Um, I had a guest on recently who picked a Nick Cave album, and I was like, I think
Huh.
that's probably stretching it a little bit, but whatever. It's like I'll allow it, I guess.
Okay. No, all my
So
picks are very much Christian bands for sure. So
okay, well I'm interested because this is the Christian music channel, so we got to talk about it at some point. So I'm very curious to hear what your five favorites are. So you can go ahead in whatever order you want.
all right. So I did a top 5 list from best to not worst, but like lowest, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Um and this was hard
Yeah.
because I feel like I haven't been like in the Christian music sphere for so long. So then I go
Mhm.
back to like nostalgia and I go back to like older albums because I'm like, this is what I remember as like a kid. This is what like I
Sure.
could probably still listen to now and actually like, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
I
Good.
don't
Because
know if you will know half of these, so this is going to be interesting.
well,
Um,
I mean, we'll see. I'm the Christian music boy, so
yeah.
we'll see.
So at number 5, we have an album by Rapture Ruckus,
That name sounds familiar.
and it is
You might.
Invader Deluxe Edition.
Is it
So
a hip hop artist?
it is a electronic musician who also like sings over
Ah.
it. And a lot of these songs were stuck in my head for a while when I was younger. This is one of those albums that was just a fun time, that I appreciated as a kid, because as a kid growing up, there were, oh, dang it, I just thought of another Christian album off of my head
Okay.
that is not on this list.
It can be. You
Great.
can have an honorable
Okay,
mention.
we'll make that. Yeah, that'll be my honorable mention. Um, so yeah, I liked it a lot because I like a lot of like electronic kind of music, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where my love for it kind of like started, was like with artists like this who are very like techno. But the
Sure.
lyrics very heavily are like Christian lyrics, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
just like a fun album too. So it's number
Okay.
5 because it's nothing super emotional or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just a fun time. And there are some
Yeah.
songs that I could probably listen to now that I
Okay.
enjoy.
Yeah. I'm looking at their Spotify right now, and I can't say that any of these albums are really ringing a bell. But I do see
Nice.
he has a collab with Slow Glow Activator, and I know that name because he's from
Yeah.
Family Force 5.
Family Force
So,
5, yeah.
Yeah.
Crank you like a chainsaw.
Oh my gosh. I met them once because
really?
they played at a youth convention, so they had like a meet and greet.
Yeah.
And yeah, cool guys. They seem like cool guys. They
Yeah.
also wore T-shirts with their own face on them. So,
Weird. Okay.
yeah, it's a choice,
Huh.
a creative choice, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you gotta brand yourself somehow, I guess, right?
I guess so. But cool. All right, Rapture Ruckus. That's a name that I can't say that I'm familiar with, but
Nice.
I will
This
check them
next
out.
one you probably will know, because I feel like this one is a bigger name.
Okay.
So at my number 4, I have "Welcome to the New" by Mercy Me.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, of course I know Mercy
I
Me.
bought the CD for this specifically, and me and my family would listen to it in the car. Again, it's just one of those like fun albums. It's like if the song Happy was Christian and had like an entire album. That's kind of like the vibe.
Okay.
And I don't know, there was just a lot of the songs that I liked because of how catchy they were.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing, it's pretty super, no, what? It's pretty surface level. But it is
And
it is
also
a fun
super.
listen. And also super. But I literally have the CD for this. I think it's still in my parents' car because I don't think I actually have it on me, sadly. But
okay.
no, it's I don't. And the weird thing is, like, I was never a big fan of Mercy Me, and then I listened to this album and I'm like, okay, I actually really like this album, even though I'm not even a big fan of Mercy Me. So it's like, I don't know what happened here, but
Well, maybe
like
that
it.
means that I need to give it a chance because I also have never been a big Mercy Me fan. So
Yeah,
maybe that'll be the album that turns me.
I think this is the only album I've listened to of theirs, and I feel like I haven't heard these songs in a while too. So maybe I should like go back and re-listen to some of this because I totally forgot these existed, to be honest. But it's definitely a fun listen on like a sunny day in the car. You know, it's some good vibes.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Okay, cool. Mercy Me then. I like it. All right, so that was your number 4.
Yep.
And moving on to your number 3.
My number 3 is Therapy Session by NF.
Oh, okay. NF.
So here's the deal, right?
so hold on. Listen.
I've ruffled some feathers with my opinions on NF multiple times, both on the internet and in real life.
Okay.
So here's the deal. I like NF like generally, right? He's got some really good songs. I listened to him like as soon as he released his Mansion album. So I was there from the beginning, right? And a lot of people don't understand that. So I've listened to every single one. Yes, before he blew up, right? I was an original fan of his. I've listened to every single album of his, and Therapy Session is definitely his peak in terms of like quality and writing. I love this album, and I specifically love one of the songs in particular because it made me cry, and it's about the death of his mother, and it's a super emotional song, and it is amazing. And there has never been a high like that since like this album or that song in NF's like entire catalog.
Yeah.
And that is really sad to me because he blew up after, like, in my opinion, like his best songwriting, right? And so now people know him for like his more recent stuff, which some of it is good, but I didn't really like his most recent album. And I haven't liked his like more recent albums. I like a lot of his older stuff because it was a lot more raw and real, and it was just like an independent artist trying to make it, and then he made it.
Sure.
And now his music to me just sounds completely different in terms of like tone and just like topics and stuff, which fair enough, but like it's not that like underground feeling anymore. He's basically a pop artist now, you know?
Sure, yeah. So, and he's appeasing to his audience. Yeah.
And I will say his music videos are great. I love his music videos. Like they're beautiful, right? But
very cinematic.
Even he says, he's like, am I making music or am I making music videos? What was it? It's like films or music videos. He's like, am I making films or music videos? Is one of the lyrics. And I feel like he started going like more cinematic than like real actual like raw things that he's like actually dealing with kind of thing. The more popular he got, the more he talked about his success instead of his struggles.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And so that was a trend that I noticed for a while. And to the point where I made a entire video about his album Perception, which I believe was the one right after Therapy Session. And to me, Perception just felt like a total downgrade in quality compared to Therapy Session.
Okay. And that
So
video
I
ruffled
think
some feathers, I'm
it
sure.
definitely ruffled some feathers. Yeah. Um,
I didn't even.
but
I'll have
he
to
has a
go back
lot of
and watch
streams.
that
He's
one.
famous. He has money. Like he's fine, dude. But like
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just like I like his songs, but I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like over time he kind of developed into this artist that a lot of people clown on now because people don't look at his like earlier stuff when his earlier stuff was just way better in general.
Mm.
Because you could
Mm-hmm.
tell, you could feel the passion in his words, and now it's just like it's not there anymore because he blew up. It's crazy to me.
Hmm.
So if I recommend any album by NF, it is Therapy Session.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good tracks on it, a lot of fun tracks, but also because it's NF, there's a lot of emotion, especially in this album. So I love it. The song "How Could You Leave Us" is probably his best song of all time. That's the one that made me cry. It's so good.
That
For
that
that
already
song
sounds
alone,
like that
it's
it's gonna make me
already, oh
cry.
yeah. But it's also like a rap hip hop album. So it's got like
Yeah.
the rap kind of genre.
Yeah.
Which he's NF was kind of the one that got me into like rap in the first place, to be honest. So he
Mm-hmm.
kind of holds a special place in my heart, like no matter what I feel about his music currently. But I just
Yeah.
prefer his older stuff. I just think it's better.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta say that I never. And maybe it was because that all the music I've really ever heard from him was after Therapy Session, because
yeah,
I never hopped onto the bandwagon. And it's not like that I really felt strongly either way about his music. It just never
yeah.
really seemed like, my thing. But I'm gonna have to give a Therapy Session a try, especially since I really do believe that a lot of the best art comes from grief, and so
Oh yeah, that's
that
definitely
definitely interests
that's definitely
me.
what NF does. He definitely, especially in his older stuff, it's a lot of like grief and pain and strife. And I love that kind of music, especially in like hip hop and rap. It works so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
it's crazy.
yeah. Okay, cool. Therapy Session, NF. I'll
Yeah,
have to
I just
give it a
like the
shot.
like the symbolism and the imagery specifically in Therapy Session too. I think it fleshes it out really well compared to his other albums.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely worth a listen.
Cool. All right then. That was your number 3.
All
Now
right.
number 2.
Number 2 is you good?
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm alive.
so this was going to be my number 1, and then I realized my favorite band of all time. So hence why this is number 2 instead of number 1, because this was
Okay.
almost number 1. Well-Meaning Fiction by Mainstay.
That is one that I am not familiar with, actually.
It was made in, I believe, 2006. I almost said 8. 2006. It is one of those albums where if you look at it on surface level, it just seems like a band making an album. But when you actually dig deeper in the lyrics, you realize, oh, this is actually a Christian band? What? That's actually really cool because the writing is actually really good. And this
Okay.
is one of my favorite albums of all time, Christian or not, even though it is a Christian band. I
Right.
know that because if you look at the album right after that, it is very clear that they are a Christian band.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
I personally prefer their first album a lot more than their second album because the second album
Mhm.
feels more like a worship album, which is totally
Mhm.
fine. But for what Mainstay was going for the first album, I think it clashed a little too much with like their style. But
Mhm.
I love Well-Meaning Fiction so much. Nobody I know except for like one person knows about this album, and now you know about it. So
Now
now
I
there's at
know.
least two. But
Yeah.
literally the first song has 1 million streams, which is crazy because it did not
Yeah, I
earlier.
see
But they only
that.
have 2 albums. I like their first album a lot, which is this one. I
Mhm.
love the entirety. It is a beautiful album from start to finish. A lot of symbolism and imagery, and
Mhm.
it ties really well together. The last track is an acoustic version of like the middle song, and it just works so well.
Mm-hmm.
I love it's a really interesting album because it's technically rock, but it's weird because the vocal delivery is softer than that, but it
Okay.
complements the music really well. So it feels very somber, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
But I love this album a lot, and in terms of Christian music, this is probably like this is definitely top two. But in general, this is probably like one of my favorite albums, like in general, like of all time. I love it so
Those are
much.
always the best. Where like
Yeah.
it's good, not even just for a Christian album, but just for an album
Yeah.
in
Well, I
general.
liked it for the music and for the album, and then I learned that it was Christian, and I'm like, what?
Nice.
That's crazy. So I love that.
Actual good Christian music.
Plus,
That's
the label is 2006 Capital Christian Music Group Inc. So it says that
okay.
at the
Yeah.
bottom too. But yeah,
Yeah. They were a pretty big label. That's crazy. I never heard of them, but I guess they were just um, a they just made it to a sophomore album. Do you know whatever happened to them?
I have no clue. As far as I
Hmm.
know, they only made 2 albums and then stopped. I don't know.
Wow. Well, I mean, I wonder, and this is just speculation because you said the second album was a lot more worshipful. I wonder if
That's
they
kind of what
were,
it felt like. Yeah.
yeah, I wonder if they were having like conflict with the label, like
Yeah.
maybe the label was pushing them to try to sound more Christian or whatever. Which there are a lot of stories of that happening with bands and then it not really working
Yeah.
out. It's funny because I can see in their Spotify uh, profile they have those premiere performance tracks where it's like the backing track so that you can sing it at church if you want to. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, people are gonna want to sing your songs and everything. So,
Yeah.
but
So
that's cool. You definitely have me intrigued. I want to
yeah.
check it out for sure.
I tried to find picks that were a little bit more obscure because
Uh huh.
I appreciate just independent artists in general.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
but so now that we're at number one, I realized I have a few honorable mentions just in general because I keep remembering things.
Go for it.
Um,
I mean, I had a guest on not too long ago, and he's like, I have like 20 number fives, and I'm gonna
right.
list them all. I'm like, okay. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear the honorable
I have
mentions.
to write them down now before I forget again. Okay. So my first honorable mentions is a live album by Mark Schultz.
Oh, I remember him.
It is, I have to try to look this up because I don't remember the name, but one of my family's friends gave us a CD. They burned this album onto the CD, so we played it in the car all the time. I made a Lego video using one of the songs back in like 2011 because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
It is, so the album is called Mark Schultz Live, A Night of Stories and Songs. And this
Nice.
was one of my first introductions to emotional music with deep meaning behind it. And it's very singer-songwriter, like piano and voice, and that's about it, really, most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But his songwriting in this album is really emotional and it's really personal, and I love it. There's at least, I think there's like one fun song on it called Running Just to Catch Myself, which I had
Okay.
that was stuck in my head for a while as a kid because it was just like one of those happy songs, you know, that's like an earworm.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a pretty emotional album that
Mm-hmm.
is very well written, which I appreciate. And I feel like it's getting harder to find really well written albums just in general, like lyrically. So I definitely appreciate this album for specifically like how the songs are written.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
it's worth a listen if you like songs about people, songs about um, the bad times in life, but at the end of the day, it's like you're gonna get better, you're gonna be okay, but we all like struggle with these things, and
Yeah.
certain people have certain struggles that other people don't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's a really introspective album, and I like it a lot.
Okay.
It's very Christian, and you can tell, but it's also
Right.
more than that. It's like very personal, and it's very open and honest with like his struggles, and then like other people's struggles that he's like of people that he actually knows in real life and stuff. Because
Mm-hmm.
in one of the songs, he writes about like a soldier, and in another song he writes about a kid with leukemia, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like these super emotional times in people's lives, and they make for really good songs. And like he knows all these people, and like they're obviously okay with like him writing about this and stuff. He got permission and whatever. But I also
Right.
like the live album specifically because you hear him talking about like these people and his friends and these situations, and it just adds to the songs so much more. It's
Yeah.
so
Like a bit of
good.
backstory.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's my favorite
Yeah.
live album of all time.
I'll have to check that out because yeah, I remember I used to really listen. I listened to his self-titled album a lot, um, and I still remember some of the songs from there, like "He's My Son," "When You Come Home," and there was an absolute banger of a song. If you want a fun song, is "Legend of McBride" by Mark Schultz.
Mm,
That's a
okay.
it's just a song where he just wrote this song about this guy that saves people's lives, and it's like he's almost like a superhero kind of. Um, but yeah, I do really I remember a lot from that album, but I never really checked out much else from him. But um, just based off of what I remember from him, yeah, he was really good at like telling stories with the songs that he wrote.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely have to check that one out for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so another honorable mention that I have is just House of Heroes in general.
Oh,
I love
nice.
all their albums,
Just their whole
but
discography.
but specifically, I'm going to recommend their very first album. One, because I think it's a good introduction to the band as a just as an intro.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also the last song is 9 minutes long, and it's probably my favorite long song.
Yeah.
Because I think it fills up the time really well, and I feel like a lot of songs don't do that very well. And
Yeah.
so I like the last song a lot. I just like this whole album in general. It's a fun listen. But I just like House of Heroes in general, so it's very hard to recommend one specific album. But I will say,
Yeah.
I think the
A
first
lot of
album
them are.
is a good way to start.
Yeah, a lot of them are so good. Like, I mean, the end is not the end. I even feel like I feel like I'm one of the few that actually likes Suburba because I feel like a lot of fans didn't really like that album for
It's
some
not my
reason.
favorite, but I do like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I like the end is not the end specifically for the song If. That song was stuck
yeah,
in my head. I've sent that song to my friends. They love it. It's a fun time.
yeah. And in the Valley of the Dying Sun, that was like
Oh,
my
that's a
first.
good one. Yeah.
That was my first introduction to them, and it's still great.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember from that first album, actually, my introduction to them was actually their music video to Serial Sleepers because
Mm,
they played it at my youth group, and I was like, "What is
I
this?
love that song.
This is different." It's been a while since I've listened to that album, but I it is a
Yeah.
good one though.
Yeah, I think my intro to this band was Cold Hard Want, because there were some songs
Mm,
off of that I really liked. And then I looked into
yeah.
them as a band, and I'm like, "Oh, I actually really like this." And for like a Christian band, their songwriting's really good.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah, and they're great musicians, very
I'm just
very
very
talented.
sad that their last album was in 2016.
Yeah, I don't even
And
know what I don't even know what they've been up to and like what
yeah,
happens. I
I
haven't.
like their most recent album. I think it's good.
Yeah,
Um, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but there are a lot of good tracks on there.
yeah, yeah. They're just a good band.
Yeah.
So cool, good pick. I approve.
All right. Ready for the
Was it
number one?
okay? So that was all your honorable
Yeah,
mentions
that's
were
all I can remember.
okay. I have a feeling I know who the number one is going to be
Who's the number
because
one?
I think you've talked about them in a comment before. Do you want me to guess, or you just want me to just go ahead and say it?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't remember the comment.
Is it 11D7?
Yeah.
Nice, very nice.
Specifically, it is the Adventures in Evil album.
Okay.
So this one, I remember this is one of those albums that I've had in my life before I even started listening to it, which is weird to say because I remember in my youth group, they had a bunch of these like Christian CDs on like a shelf, and this
Yeah.
was one of them. And I always like every single week I would look at it and I would look at that cover and I'm like, oh, that's a cool album cover. And then years later, they end up being like my favorite band of all time. It's
Yeah.
like, huh? How did that work?
It
And
just
so,
worked out.
and specifically, what's interesting here's a fun fact about this album. So it says
Mhm.
that there are 10 tracks here. That is incorrect.
Mhm.
There is at least one or two or more tracks, but for some reason they got removed off of streaming services. I don't know
Oh,
why, but there were at least like
that's
11
weird.
or 12 songs. Yeah. So that was really strange.
Hmm.
But this album has like no bad songs in my opinion. It is a really fun time. It is one of those like Christian pop punk bangers that I loved as a kid because I was angsty and I liked all this aggressive music. But
Yeah.
Matt Langston, which is the singer and songwriter and like the main lead man of the band, he just has good
Mhm.
songwriting in general. So
Mm.
I really don't have a, in my opinion, there's really not a bad 11:7 song. Um,
Yeah.
Mostly because of how the songs are written. And specifically on this album, it is a fun time from start to finish. It
Mhm.
is very coded in early 2000s, uh, like Christian pop punk culture.
Yeah.
They were the ones who made the MySpace song, if you didn't know. Um, but
MySpace song.
that was like really early in their catalog. That was off of their first album, actually.
Okay.
Um,
Because
but
first
this
thing that I
album is
think of
the yeah.
when I think of MySpace song, I think of the song "MySpace Girl" by the Afters, which
No,
that's
that's not.
that's a deep cut right there.
Yeah,
But okay, so they wrote the MySpace song.
this. I mean, I don't that was their popular one for a while, like when they
Okay.
first started. But this album that I'm talking about now is their third album.
Mm-hmm.
Which it was a really interesting time in the band's history, I think, because after this was Sugar Fist, which was 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they went on a 6-year hiatus. So this was like before their hiatus. I think out of the Christian run of their band, out of like the Christian specific albums of the
Uh-huh.
band, I think this is probably the best one because in Sugar Fist, it's kind of starts going down the route of like it's a Christian band, but they're starting to sway more into like just like pop punk songs in general.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think Adventures in Evil is that good like tipping point. I'm pretty sure with this album they toured in like Japan and everything. So this was probably like their
Mm.
biggest record at that time too.
I can imagine
Um,
that doing pretty well in Japan.
yeah, and this was also I believe this was the album that was each song was produced by like a different person, so each song
Hmm.
sounds like very different, which is pretty cool. Because
Mm-hmm.
they went to like a bunch of different studios for this specific album, I believe.
Okay.
So that really helps in terms of like making sure it's not stale in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like the sound. But it's very electronic pop punk kind of feel, because
Mm-hmm.
they like to have guitars but also have like an electronic element, and this is kind of where it really fleshes it out a lot more, because
Yeah.
their first album was like straight pop punk, no electronics whatsoever. Their next one kind of like dives a little bit into that. It's a lot more like electronic, but
Mm-hmm.
Adventures in Evil does that like perfect introduction combination of like pop punk guitars and like electronic noises and sounds. So
Right.
I think it's a
Yeah.
good one
I
to start on for their catalog.
Okay. Yeah, I will say that I'm familiar enough with 11D7, but I can't say that I've done a deep dive into their music, but
Yeah.
I do remember because that was actually another music video that my youth group played, was their music video for was it Love in Your Arms? Um
Yeah. Okay.
which is a fun video too because they're like playing the video game and everything. I always thought that was so cool. But that was something that really stuck out to me about them, was I loved that perfect blend of electronic and pop
Yeah.
punk, which I feel like at that time was kind of hard to pull off
Oh yeah, for sure.
without being cringy, you know?
I
And
think it
I
was
feel
very
like that,
ahead of its time.
yeah, I think that they did a really good job. Based off of what I've heard from them. I think there was another more recent song from them that I also liked, but I can't remember which one that is. Um, but yeah, it's a vibe that I'm definitely down for. Uh,
Yeah. This band has been around since 2006, which is crazy to think about,
yeah, and they're still doing music, right?
because within the span of almost 2 decades, it's been really interesting seeing the progression of this band and how it's gone,
Mm-hmm.
because half of the albums are very much like Christian pop punk, and then past that it's really kind of like, it's still like electronic pop punk,
Mm-hmm.
but it kind of shifts its tone lyrically, and it's more so about like deconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a totally like opposite vibe lyrically, but because Matt Langston is a good writer, the songs still sound good. Like, he
Right.
is a good songwriter. He's been doing it since 2006. Like,
Yeah.
I love his songwriting. He's probably my favorite singer songwriter just in general.
Hmm.
My favorite lyricist. Every single time they make an album, they take so much time to
Mm-hmm.
make it. There was literally a 6 year hiatus between Sugar Fist and Rad Science. And personally, Rad Science is my favorite album of all time. But this is also in the point of their catalog where they're starting to go more in the deconstruction route. But
Okay.
it's just a good album in general. Like, I think it's fantastic. And whenever I
Is
recommend 11D7 to somebody, I always recommend Rad Science, because I have not found a person who has genuinely disliked this album. It's just a fun
mm,
album from beginning to end. It's good. I love it a lot.
is that why you didn't pick it for this list, because it was a bit more on the like deconstruction kind of side?
It's not, I would not consider it a Christian album, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Gotcha.
It's just a good album.
Yeah, sure.
So
It's
um
too good to be called a Christian album.
no, it's not that. It's just like, yeah, it's just not in that like phase of their catalog, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I don't know if you're at all familiar with, I mean, maybe you are, with Sega Night Kevin, is a
yep,
YouTuber. Yeah.
yep, I met
Kevin,
him.
oh, nice. I've like met him virtually, like online, and I used to write for his website. But I think it was the lead singer who
Yep.
wrote and recorded his outro song because
Yeah.
Kevin's also a big fan, as far as I know, and I think he also even had him on his podcast before,
I
but I
think
don't know
so.
if I
Yeah.
ever listened to it. But
So, do you know who Blimey Cow is?
oh yeah, they're like
I went to
the
Blimey
oh
Con in 2018, and Kevin was
nice.
there. So,
Oh okay, yeah, yeah, because they're like the OG Christian YouTubers.
yeah. Have you ever been to Blimey Con before?
No, no,
Mm. So I wouldn't
I
have seen you.
actually,
Okay.
yeah, I think um I think I got on the Blimey Cow bandwagon a little late, and I personally was more of a Kevin fan than a Blimey Cow
Yeah.
fan. In fact, really the only Blimey Cow content that I really like ended up watching consistently was messages. just because just
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
I loved Jordan's reactions to them, and he's got a great sense of humor, and I
Yeah.
guess I preferred that over the scripted stuff. um
Mm.
but um but yeah, yeah, Blimey Cow. And I know Kevin's been very busy doing a lot of his own stuff. He hasn't been
Yeah.
uploading as much, but Kevin's actually very instrumental in, well, unintentionally, as to uh, me doing YouTube as
Mm.
well. Because, like, he talks about Christian movies, but no one talks about Christian music. Maybe that should be me. so,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, but cool. So you're number one, 11D7. Very nice.
I mean, I would put any album by 1187 as number one, but I have to choose
Yeah.
one. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Sorry. I
but
like to
yeah.
make my guests suffer.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
I think
That's
that
fine.
I think that brings up interesting picks, honestly. So, because like I even like doing it because it's like I don't even know if the guest probably even really listens to Christian music all that much. So it's interesting to
Right.
like force them to think about it.
No, it was a
So
fun exercise. I enjoyed it.
good.
Because it reminded me of a lot of stuff that I totally forgot about. And I was like, oh, I actually really like this album. I should listen to it again.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't say that I was expecting like a Mark Schultz pick on there,
Honestly, it
but I
kind of
like
just
it.
popped up in my brain. And I was thinking, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah.
It's very nice. It's very unexpected, but I like it. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do because I like hearing other people's like musical tastes and such. So it's interesting to hear their why they're passionate about why they like the music that they like. So
Yeah.
thanks for doing it. Thanks for humoring me.
Yeah, no problem. That was a lot of fun.
Well, hello there. Thanks so much for watching this video. It means a lot. Not sure if you noticed, but this is actually a clip from a longer full-length episode that you can go check out right now on my main channel. I'm Clifford today, because this channel is just a clips and highlights channel. Because if you're not a real YouTuber unless you have multiple channels. So, anyways, go like and subscribe and all that stuff. I love you.